So, Professor Sue Black, OBE, thank you so much for making the time to talk with me. How are you today?
No, I'm good, thank you. Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, you too. So, I didn't want to prep you for the opening question, which is the one I ask everyone at the top of this conversation.
Yeah.
But if we were to imagine some kind of global human psyche, if we use that as a mythic frame or something, what do you sense or suspect might be happening right now for this global human psyche? Where are we at?
Wow.
Uh,
Mm.
don't want to give people much time to think about that. It's too big a question.
I feel like I need a week to think about it. Thanks for dropping that on me.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
well, yeah, where are we? I mean, I guess I can only really talk about it from a personal perspective in that
Mm,
just in general, I thought we were all kind of gradually going in the right direction in terms of caring about people and kind of like through my life from like I guess the 60s onwards with the different governments we've had and stuff, we were moving towards thinking about others in society, making sure that everyone kind of had a chance in life, and like poverty being eradicated in different countries, and things like, I don't know, like Nelson Mandela kind of coming out of prison and the end of apartheid, and then it was gradually got better and better and better until the last
mm.
few years when it all seems to have gone to shit.
Yep. Not going to get any argument from me.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's exactly the sort of thing that you meant, but I kind of feel like, I mean, a lot of it, I guess, is because of technology, really. I see technology as a positive thing most of the time, whereas in fact, I mean, it's not positive or negative itself.
Mm,
But I suppose I always try to use it for good. But I feel like probably because of the internet and the World Wide Web, and then particularly social media, it's meant that what I thought was a positive thing, like early days of Twitter, like 2008, 2009, I was so excited that we could all connect to each other in this new way. And so we could change the world and solve the world's problems. That's what was in my head.
yeah.
I was running the campaign to save Bletchley Park at the time. And Twitter made such a massive difference in that. It's probably the key factor that meant that Bletchley Park was saved, really, because I could suddenly connect with people all over the world and get them involved in the campaign. So I saw that as really positive, and that actually just reminded me I had one day where I just suddenly thought, hang on, if we're using it for good, there's the opposite side of that. So bad actors could also use it against vast swathes of people, and then things like that started happening, really. And it was a bit of a horrific day when I realised that,
Mm.
because I just hadn't thought about it before. I guess I'm a bit of a Pollyanna, to be honest. So I just see everything's lovely, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, everything isn't lovely. Um, and so we've kind of seen some of that with sort of vast swathes of population being manipulated by bad actors. All of the stuff around Cambridge Analytica, and
Yeah.
just like horrific, really, how so many people want to manipulate people to, like vote against their best interest and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like we're in a bit of a um, difficult time, I suppose, at the moment. And I think technology is a massive part of sort of advances in technology. It's a massive part in how we've ended up where we are. But at the same time, I'm still Pollyanna, so I still believe in a bright future.
But I think it's so important to have um, prominent thinkers, practitioners, leaders among us who actually do hold a positive vision, because it's all very well and good. I tend towards the more vigilant side of things, but also realizing that the imagination is such an important tool to be able to create the futures in which people are supported, all to come to the table and all to have a perspective and to actually engage in the technology that is impacting all of our lives, whether we're, in a country where it's getting rolled out and digital IDs are kind of, in the UK certainly being pushed, or you're somewhere where the technology is perhaps less visible, but it's being used to make decisions about your entire country's economy. Like, we all have a stake in it because it's impacting all of our lives. And so one of the things I'd like to dig into is thinking particularly about that Because a lot of your work focuses on bringing people together, bringing people into contact with technology, and giving them the literacy, the tools, and also kind of the mindset to go, oh, hang on, maybe this is for me. Um, what are your thoughts about where we're lacking in bringing people together? Is there something missing, something we're not doing right? And what could we be doing better to bring more people into contact with tech so we have a greater sense of collective agency?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think, well, all the way through, really, from kindergarten through school, through adults, adult education. Um, I kind of lobbied hard to get technology into primary schools back in about 2011, 2012.
Mm.
Um, Michael Gove was saying back then that computing is too difficult to be taught to anyone under 14, and I just thought, well, that's a load of rubbish. I need to try and do something about it. So I started running workshops for kids in primary schools, which went really well, and then ended up setting up a social enterprise tech mums to teach tech skills to mums living in disadvantaged areas. So I guess I've cared about that for quite a long time, and I feel like our education system, which is not the fault of teachers at all, is just so behind in what we're teaching. And of course, not every single thing, but I mean, so much of it is still, if we think about GCSEs and A levels, a lot of it is still about memorizing facts
Yeah.
rather than critical thinking, which is what we all need, to become experts at these days, if possible, because we've got the internet. So, you can look stuff up all the time. And it's good to be able to memorize some things just so that you've got that capability in your brain. But I just think like cramming loads of stuff into your brain, which then you forget like 2 days later, is just pointless. And that's no way to examine kids either. I think we should be helping them to solve problems. We've got so much capability with technology now and the way that we're all so connected to be able to solve the world's problems. And isn't that what we should be focusing on teaching our kids, is how to solve those problems?
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think sort of problem-based learning should be the kind of like the fundamental basis of how things are taught in schools now, which it isn't. And I think with technology, like most adults have gone through our school system, which hasn't taught them much about technology. And then also as an adult, there's not much out there either. So,
Yeah.
again, some of the programs that I've been part of or run have been to help upskill people. So like TechUPWomen, our current program at Durham University, is retraining women from underserved communities into tech careers. And the whole idea with that is, that I've kind of realized from my life that technology and education have played a massive role in
Mm.
really empowering me and helping me to bring my kids out of poverty um, many years ago now, but have enabled me to have a successful life and career, which if I hadn't chosen that path, who knows, like
Yeah.
where I'd be. And I really realized the kind of ripple effect, like it's affected me and my children, but now, I've got 6 grandchildren and, like, so affecting them, excuse me. And, that's just going to carry on over time. And so we run these programs to help women who face multiple barriers get into tech careers. And so that's good from lots of different perspectives, in that the industry needs more people from diverse
Yeah.
backgrounds coming into technology roles to help them. Um, if you think about it, tech companies or even companies in general are now operating in a global marketplace. And so they need people with all different sorts of backgrounds, in all different sorts of ways, so that they can really think hard about their customer base, which won't be just one group of people, most likely.
Mm.
It'll be people from around the world of different ages, different genders, um, and like different cultural backgrounds. And so you need those diverse teams thinking about the technology products and services that are being created to help companies be successful. And so that's from kind of one aspect. And then we know that retraining women into tech means that they can then apply for jobs which will help them to become more financially stable. And
Mhm.
again, that doesn't just affect them as a person, quite often that affects everybody around them as well. And so we found with TechUp, we've just had our amazing data guy, Addy, who works with us at TechUp, looking at sort of crunching the data over the last 6 years. And he's found that the average salary uplift for one of the women coming on our programs is £11,000 a year.
Wow.
And some of the courses are only 12 hours a week for 6 weeks. So it's not like a
Wow.
massive, long, several years program or anything. Um, and about half the women coming on the program were unemployed before they came on the program, and their average salary after coming on the program is £23,000 a year. So again, we're really making a difference to those women, but also to the companies that they then go on to work for,
Yeah.
because they get all of that expertise, that background, a different perspective on things. Um, I
Yeah.
forgot what the question was now.
No, no, that was great. Yeah, you're touching on so many different points. But I think there's something about, especially when we're talking about a diversity of perspectives, and
Yeah,
especially with the complexity of the problems that we face, we want all the smarts we can get. And there's only a certain amount of diversity or plurality or depth of perspective you're going to get when you're working from one particular lens. Um, and so actually the problem solving, the quality of the problem solving that you get when you bring different perspectives together is much higher. I mean, so much of the psychological research bears this out. But I'm thinking now in particular, when we're considering the various different kinds of disruption that we're seeing from AI technologies, principally generative AI, but still, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in terms of workflows and back and the rest of it. But when we're thinking about the disruption that's coming from companies turning to AI tools and platforms either to augment, which is the favorite word of some of these tech bros, augment human capacities or to replace future workers. Because we're seeing like, it's not so much that people are being fired necessarily who already have existing roles, but in one of the analyses I read, there was evidence to suggest that younger people in their 20s are simply not getting the work that previous generations in their 20s would have done. So some interesting conversations about that. But thinking about AI and disruption, one of the things that you are focused on is the AI opportunity gap. Can you tell us a bit about that?
yeah, sure. Well, so I think kind of like following on from what I was saying before about
Mm.
technology and us not being taught about tech in schools, so now we're sort of in the AI era, and so the latest thing in tech is AI. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's talking about it all the time. It seems like you can't get away from the conversation. And I think a lot of the time the focus is on it being a negative thing. And again, like technology is not positive or negative, so AI is not positive or negative either. It's how we use it and what we do with it. And I feel like there is a lot of focus about the jobs that are disappearing, but not much focus on the jobs that are being created or
Mm.
will be created. And I think it's the same in every sort of industrial revolution like this, like it's from the printing press onwards where, you know, um, people back then, so not so many people could read, and the
Mm.
printing press meant that there's a real point to reading because there would be something for you to read. With the printing press, you didn't have to be ridiculously wealthy to get a book or anything. And so, the same sort of thing as happens each time there's one of these kind of like revolutions, in that there is kind of like there is a big change. And I feel like we're kind of in the middle of it at the moment. And then some jobs will disappear, but then also some jobs will be created. And I think there's a massive opportunity. And I quite often get asked, sort of like what should I be doing with AI? Um, and I think really the answer that I usually give is think about the things that you like doing. So whether that's at work or at home, and then find out all about how AI can do something to make that better or easier or faster or, more productive, or, because AI's got so much potential to help. I mean, if ChatGPT got taken away now, what would I do like in my life?
Really?
I've got so used to using it every day in various different ways. Um, yeah, I mean, it just speeds up what I do. I think, so particularly I do quite a lot of writing. And
Yeah.
so, I don't type into ChatGPT, like write me an essay about X. But what I can do is I can now sort of write a stream of consciousness, kind of like I'm interested in this, and I'm thinking about that and that and that and that and that. Give me like a basic structure for like a 1,000 word essay on this topic,
Mm.
taking these points of view into account. And it will come up with some sort of structure, and then I can just kind of like get started writing. I don't have to sit for probably an hour to think about what's
Mm.
the structure going to be. And of course, if it's not right, then I'll just change it. But so I think as time goes on, we're going to be thinking of more and more ways that we can use AI to speed up what we do, to make it better. And I think that I just really want everyone to realize that there is opportunity in there. It's not something to be scared of.
Yeah.
I quite often get people kind of right outside of the sort of technology world thinking that the AI is going to take over the world, and they're really scared. And what they kind of see that is like AI robots running down the road with guns and kind of like into their house, and is going to shoot them or something. And and to me, that's not the thing to that's not going to happen, and that's not a thing to worry about. It's more if you're not up to speed with what's going on, how AI is being used in your area, and if you're not interacting with AI at all and just finding out what is going on, you're much more at risk of being manipulated by bad actors, for example,
Mm.
into thinking things are true which aren't. And we can see already sort of massive amounts, like millions of people being manipulated to vote in certain ways. And I kind of feel like the opportunity is out there if we all just try to get up to speed with what's going on as it relates to our lives. So, like not learn all the technical details at all, but just like kind of see how AI is being used, what people are doing, how's it being used for good and for bad, so that you're
Mm.
kind of up to speed with all of that. And then you can understand reality, I think, a bit
Yeah.
better. I mean, do any of us understand reality? I
Well,
guess
that's another question.
no, exactly. That's a whole like week's conversations
Yeah.
probably. But at least you can have more of an opinion. And yeah, I just feel like there's a massive opportunity there
Mm.
for new jobs to be created, for people to come up with ideas of jobs which we've not had before, where they could make a living, which could benefit them and their families. Whereas if we just kind of like shut ourselves off from it, then that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of fear around what technologies could potentially do. But I think when we've grown up watching things like Terminator and The Matrix,
Yeah,
that's exactly the narrative you just
yeah,
described,
yeah,
isn't it? Like the robots
yeah,
coming. And so sort of back to this thing about the imagination and creativity and thinking, well, what are some of the other ways in which we could use these technologies in service to better education or supporting families and communities to thrive? And what do you think are, so you've mentioned a couple of the issues actually. So manipulation,
yeah,
you implied, I think, things like fake content, because
yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of the content that we're seeing on social media is indistinguishable from,
yeah,
like, the Gen AI stuff is indistinguishable from the real. What are
yeah.
some of the biggest myths that you think people need to be aware of when it comes to AI and technology? What should we actually be looking at? And then second part is like, what should we be worried about?
Yeah, well, I think we should be worried about being manipulated. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the main thing. Like, fake news, and yeah, like fake videos,
Mm.
and because now people's voices, videos can be replicated where it just seems like it's the person actually speaking. And we need to again kind of like think critically about these sort of things. And we're going to have to work out for ourselves as much as possible, is that fake or isn't it? And that's not always an easy thing to do. But then
Mm-mm.
so we're going to have to because you could watch a video of us having this conversation, and it's our
Yeah.
actual conversation, and you could have a version where there's a load of hate speech or something, that someone's just used this video and
Yeah.
created a hate speech video, which is not us. So I think when we're watching things online, we're watching videos, we just have to think, does this really sound, is this what I expect to be happening here? Hopefully no one would think that I would be creating hate speech videos. Um, and, so we're going to have to be very sort of discerning really in trying
Mm.
to work out whether things are true or not. And to always kind of like take a step back and think, okay, does this sound like the sort of thing that I thought was gonna happen?
Yeah.
I mean, and the area is just getting kind of, sort of, more and more difficult to determine that. But then it
Yeah.
becomes more and more important for us to try and take a step back and think, "Okay, does this really seem like something that would happen, or not?" And, yeah, I'm not saying that's gonna be easy. I don't know how that's all gonna pan out over
Mm.
you. But, I think if something sounds completely false, then potentially it is. But like we in going back to education, we haven't even got the basic education for people really in the UK anyway, around sort of like phishing emails and,
Yeah.
like, so people are losing money left, right, and centre because it's so hard to tell in a text email, like a text-based email, whether something is real or not.
Yeah.
So it is a really, really difficult area. I'm not saying it's easy at all, but I think we all have to always take a step back and just kind of like check.
Mm.
And I would really love to see the government putting together programs to just teach everybody, a bit like the Open University programs on TV back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Something like that, for different platforms. I've in fact suggested it several times, but I don't have the funding to create it myself. But like something like Open University programs, like short programs which just teach you what about what's going on and how to do these things, how to work out what's real and what isn't.
Mm.
And something like that on different platforms to help people, like something appropriate for TikTok, something for
Yeah.
Instagram, just to get the messages over, or the basic how to keep yourself safe online, how to spot a phishing video, phishing email, how to spot a fake news, fake video.
The thing is, like, so because I mean, I do quite a lot of research around this for my work, and one of the things that I get sent quite a bit from friends and family are examples of videos that have been generated that are
Yeah,
spoofs, or this kind of stuff. And some of the stuff recently, I haven't been able to tell the difference.
yeah,
And it's not that I'm an expert in it, but I do critically assess videos as part of my wider work. And I was sitting there thinking, this is literally back in January. Okay, if I'm doing this in the context of, right, I'm analytically looking at this piece of footage to see if I can determine if there's anything about it that makes it feel um, uncanny or fake or whatever. And it was just a piece of content. It was a funny thing. It wasn't even politically polarizing or anything like this. If I can't tell the difference on something like this when I'm actively looking for it, then what about all those times where and I try to be not like this, but it's a bit tricky, when I'm trying not to be distracted, or I'm whipping out my phone and I'm looking on Instagram, or I've got you've got a really busy schedule. So do I, you're running between meetings, and you just, when we live in in an environment in which many of us are juggling lots of things, and we're having
yeah,
to deploy resources, even when you are literate and the stuff that they're doing, it's
yeah,
still really tricky. And I'm kind of quite heartened thinking about your more sort of optimistic take on where technology could take us.
yeah,
I am heartened by the fact that TikTok and Meta and Snapchat, and that basically we're having a much more serious, teethy conversation about the responsibilities of these platforms, not just the responsibilities of us, the end consumer or user, whatever, saying, okay, well, we need to be literate, which we absolutely do, but also say, well, hang on, you guys also share some accountability here. Um, and that gives me a sense of optimism in terms of what we might apply in regulatory terms to AI platforms going forward, because a lot of these issues around manipulation are human issues. They're not
yeah,
necessarily tech issues, in the sense that the incentive and the motive and the action comes from a person who's going, right, I'm going to get more views and engagement because I want to get this person to feel outrage or hatred or whatever. Um, what are some of the most exciting uses of technology that you've seen, or that you're dreaming up, that you think would be really heartening for people who are slightly on the more pessimistic side of the seesaw?
Well, I mean, I suppose I've been trying to do some things myself. So like with ChatGPT, you can create your own GPT. So I created Ask Dr. Black, and kind of, you put in loads of your own data,
Yeah.
which hopefully is fine. And then you give it a script basically, and then people can ask it questions. And I was kind of thinking, like, what if I tried to not exactly clone myself, because it's not exactly
Mm.
that, but like create an online version of myself, because I'm so busy. It's not really that, but I just thought, because I mean the stuff that I've focused on over the years is kind of like technology empowerment, I suppose, and um, helping people to use technology to improve their lives in
Mm.
all sorts of ways, and then a particular focus on women in technology. And I just thought, well, maybe if I could kind of create something where women could have conversations, because I end up chatting to so many women, I have done over the last 30 years nearly, who for one reason or another are not having a great time at
Yeah.
work with technology in all different sorts of ways. And because I come from a background of some disadvantage, you know, like I left home and school at 16 and ended up in a women's refuge as a single parent with 3 small children when I was
Mm.
24.
So young.
And kind of like it was technology and education that enabled me to turn my life around really, and then you know, have a create a better life for my kids as well. And so, because I've kind of been through that, and I talk about that when I'm giving keynotes or whatever, speaking at companies, then I do get lots of women approaching me saying X, Y, Z negative things been happening to me, and you know, can we have a chat, basically? And I just thought was so if I could create Ask Dr. Black, which is as much like me and the sort of things that I would say as possible, then that resource could be out there, you know, for because I'm only human, I've only got so much time for women or anyone to chat to about specific issues that they might want to know. You know, you also get lots of career, you know, like stuff about careers because I've gone from, you know, living in poverty through to being a sort of successful woman in tech. So, you know, stuff around career advice and yeah, so I created that a few weeks ago and put it out there, and yeah, and it seems like it's useful. But what I would want is that if it did say anything that wasn't the sort of thing that I would say, then people would think, oh, hang on, that doesn't really sound like Sue. So that's something that's gone wrong with the AI. You know, I wouldn't want them to follow blindly anything if it was telling them something which was obviously not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so no one's managed to completely break it so far and can come back to me with some kind of like rambling rubbish. I do that. I do that on occasion as well. Um, and yeah, so I kind of feel like that sort of thing where you can replicate positive. It's not exactly counselling, is it? But you know, like kind of positive advice for
Mm.
people, which they, you know, might have to pay a lot of money for
Yeah.
otherwise, you know, and that can be done in all different sorts of ways, I think. So I think being able to replicate positive, what is that? I don't even know what you'd call it as like a general term, but positive technologies
Yeah.
to help people with sort of their everyday lives or their careers or that sort of thing. I think there's massive potential for that.
Mm. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting in terms of headlines that I've seen in the last few months is around the lower adoption rate of AI platforms and tools among women than men. And I'm always curious about the headlines and then actually what the research and the data actually
Mm,
says, because obviously
yeah,
headlines have got to get people to click. And
yeah,
so there's some that most of them are framed negatively, and then a couple of them I read a few essays and articles about it, and I thought, well, actually, this is interesting because the framing says a lot too. So when people talk about AI, often they're talking about generative AI like
yeah,
ChatGPT or Nano Banana or DeepSeek, you know, one of these things.
yeah,
And so thinking about that as the main frame, and then thinking about women, which is, I mean, that's such a, it's like what, 52% of the global population. There's so much variety in that cohort. So like in
sure.
general, women. And then think, okay, well, what actually might it be that is causing a lower adoption rate? And there's lots of different reasons, but one of the things I thought was particularly interesting was the idea that maybe it's not about rejecting the technology. Maybe it's about a greater sense of analysis, skepticism, and not having this kind of rush to adopt something before you understand it better and you see the fallout. Obviously, I'm sure there are a mix of different answers to
Yeah,
this, but I think there's something really interesting in the ways in which we talk about the benefits of Gen AI in particular and what people can do with it. So, for instance, having this very pro-social perspective that you're going to create your own GPT, train it with your data, and then make that available for people who want to be able to have contact. And that's a fantastic way for them to do that. That's quite a different perspective than many people who are being told, well, um, you know, if you don't adopt one of these platforms, then your job is going to be at risk. And at the same time, many of these people are looking critically at the content that's going out there. If it's like a piece of marketing or um, an advert, for instance, and they're seeing that actually the content piece doesn't really have a distinctive voice because it's being used in a very, you know, roughshod kind of way, as opposed to thinking critically, putting in your own data, tweaking it, editing it. So that I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about AI adoption, but also the critical, analytical judgment of what it's producing and whether that's getting you meaningfully closer to your goal. So with you creating a bot, that's got a very clear vision, very specific purpose, and
Yeah.
you know who your audience is.
Yeah.
What do you think we have to think of when we're using these sorts of technologies in order to make sure that they are being useful and we're not just, I mean, obviously it's one thing playing with them to get used to them, but what
Yeah.
are some of the principles do you think we need to have in mind if we are going to make the most of these tools?
Well, I mean, I think again, going back to that diversity piece in
Mm,
terms of we want the people that are producing them to come from diverse backgrounds because then they'll think about all different types of people
yeah.
using the product. So I think it's quite a basic thing, but it doesn't happen very often that that's actually what's going on. You know, there's loads of examples with technology of not specifically AI, but just with tech of, you know, like very homogenous groups of people
Yeah.
creating the technology. And the one that comes to mind is from a while ago, but it's like the health app on the iPhone, I think it was. And, you know, like it
Mm.
didn't have anything at all about periods and stuff like that, you know, because they hadn't been written by or created
People
by
who
or
have periods.
like any women at all. You know, and it's just like that's just so basic. But it
So
just shows you
basic.
like one of the world's richest companies, Apple, still doesn't get it right. And they could easily change that, right? But they just
Easily.
didn't even think about it, I guess.
Yeah.
So that stuff happens all the time, unfortunately. And like, you know, I really think that the companies that really focus hard on diversity now, particularly if they want to be sort of global players, they're focusing on having diverse teams in all different sorts of ways, you know, because it's also about social class and
Yeah.
age. And, you know, like people have grown up with all different sorts of experiences. And if you're creating technology that's going to be doing more than, you know, like something very basic, then you need that diversity in there for it to be a sort of fully rounded product that's fit for purpose for everybody.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's the most important thing really in terms of creating technology is you just need to think about it from that perspective. And I
Yeah.
don't understand why more companies don't. I mean, I guess probably in some ways it's more expensive because
Yeah.
it's non-traditional, because it's not always been like that, and change always costs money and stuff. But I think, yeah, I can't see why anyone would think that wasn't good sense.
Yeah. I mean, some of these things just seem blindingly obvious if
Yeah,
you know anyone who's got even a slightly different perspective, background, life experience than you from a
yeah,
different generation. But I think part of it also is that there is such it's like people we've especially in the West, there seems to be this kind of tendency to live life in silos, this stratification. So even between different age groups.
yeah,
I came to Barcelona 9 years ago to study art at this academy. And one of the things that I loved the most about it was that the youngest student at the time was 18 and the eldest was 76. And we
right.
would all hang out. It was
Yeah,
just fucking great because, you know, and you'd all go out for beers afterwards. It wasn't this
yeah,
kind of a weird, I mean, I always have thought it's weird, this weird sort of thing of, well, you're 30, so you're not going to go to a club, or you're 60, so you're not going to come
yeah,
for a beer, or you're 18, so you can't engage in more philosophical, whatever. You know, I'm just picking out some,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, sort of some stereotypes here, but there does seem to be something there as well about access to people who've just got a bit of a different life experience.
yeah.
And the ways in which you mentioned at the top of our conversation, Twitter being this incredible tool for access to people. And I think when it was taken in that spirit, it was phenomenal.
Yeah,
Um, and I still have hope. There's some, you know, the work with that Audrey Tang did in Taiwan, creating a system that floats items. So, for instance, within the world of politics, that were more likely to gain consensus. There are ways in which we can use existing technologies with specific motives in order to create pro-social outcomes, not in a communist way, but in a way that allows people to convene around things that they actually share in terms of their values. So there's also that whole piece as well, which is, you know, often we think one of the biggest narratives I'm worried about with AI is that there seems to be this idea that this tech overlord, dystopian, you know, Waymo cars, robot dogs that are going to shoot you, that kind of world that you mentioned, that's it. But actually, there is so much more that's possible. We just have to
yeah,
use technology in service to very specific visions and values.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
you know, like the fact that we can connect with anyone that's online around the world,
yeah,
you know, and you can get people together from around the world, from all different cultures with expertise in different things to solve big world problems, you know,
yeah,
like poverty, for example. And And that we've now got ChatGPT. We can ask ChatGPT how to do that as well, to give us suggestions of what might work. That we've got so many, it's very sort of simplistic view, but we've got so many tools at our fingertips now to make the world a better place and to, make sure that people don't have to sort of live in grinding poverty and, like that. I just don't understand why we're not all doing that. But I guess that's part of humanity, unfortunately. I mean, you were talking about the women being less likely to engage with AI and stuff, but that might just be because women are encouraged out of technology. Like I've spent 30 years as a woman in technology and set up the UK's first online network for women in tech back in 2001. So we're just celebrating our 25th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And the whole idea really around loads of the stuff that I've done there is not that it's kind of about bringing together women who've had, I guess, in some ways similar experiences around technology, being a woman in technology. And a lot of time that's amazing because technology is amazing, but sometimes it can be horrible.
Yeah.
Like when anything bad happens, it's great to have people around you who support you and help you to just kind of like get over it and move on and maybe work out how it could be dealt with better or how things need to change to make things better. And in fact, I've just set up a new group called the Women in Tech Power Network, which is really specifically around helping women working in tech. This is to fast track their careers and help them be aware of all of the hurdles that they might have to jump over, which aren't kind of in clear view.
Huh.
And so that's been going really well. We've got nearly 70 women in the group, and everyone's in there's got their different perspectives of
Yeah.
things, hurdles that they've jumped over, and then supporting other women who don't understand kind of what's going on. It's like, for example, like one of the younger women in the group is looking for a job, and we just had a chat online just now, like a group chat, and she was saying that she stopped reading her LinkedIn messages, like private messages, because men will pretend they're trying to help her get a job, and then they'll start asking inappropriate questions
Oh,
and
it's
stuff.
just so boring.
Oh no, I know it's terrible, isn't
It's
it?
like, come
It's-
on.
yeah, no, exactly, and it's just like it just kind
This
of
is
like
something they could fix.
hey.
This is something they could
Yeah, no, it
fix.
totally is something they could fix. Yeah, but just the fact that she was saying in the meeting that she's not looking at her private, direct
Yeah.
messages anymore, and it's just like she's looking for a job. She has to interact with
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
like that. But she's so traumatized from the stuff all these guys are saying to her, and it's just so wrong.
Yeah.
So we do need spaces like the group that I've set up so that women can discuss these things in a sort of safe environment and then get
Yeah.
advice from other women on what to do. And so we've told her to take the guys' names off and put a post on LinkedIn saying this is what I have to
Brilliant.
deal with.
Yeah.
But
Brilliant.
like, on your own, that can make you feel terrible, like she hadn't
Yeah.
told anyone about it till today. And is depressing. But like you're saying, that's another thing technology companies could be easily be doing, and they
Easily.
just a lot of the time don't bother to do, unfortunately.
Yeah, and there's so many examples of different permutations of this. Like the one
Mm.
that I was just thinking about at the beginning of the year, and Grok allowed people to create naked images.
Yeah,
Who's it going to be of? Let me guess. Women and children.
yeah,
Well done. It's like it's just so obvious, and it's to the point of being banal. But of course, people's lives are really impacted
yeah, absolutely.
horrendously. And I think there's some of these things which they are so predictable and obvious. And this
Yeah,
is just taking the most obvious example that it would be so easy for companies, if they wanted to make decisions in which guardrails were in place so these things were not going to happen. Or, for instance, the Saul Setzer and Adam Rain and all the countless children whose names have not been shared for very good reasons, who have self-harmed or
yeah,
ended up taking their own lives,
it's
suicide
horrendous.
through, the encouragement of some of these character-based or chatbot-based Gen AI models. It's like how some of these things are really obvious issues when you ask people who worked with people, back to your point around
Yeah,
diverse perspectives. If you've
yeah,
ever had context in which you've been uh, persecuted in any form, then you know that that is a dark aspect of humanity, and one can accept that and then make choices that protect people who are likely to have to deal with that from having to deal with that. You can't always protect everyone, but it just seems to me like we're so, with all of the technology at our disposal, the fact that we still aren't getting these basic things accounted for is just bonkers. But it does also point towards the very clear incentives that these companies have, which is, well, okay, what's more important?
Yeah.
Women and
Well,
children's well-being.
money's more
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
But
exactly. Or
then
just,
also, if we had more diverse CEOs at the top of
yeah.
these companies, or people in senior positions, more women, more people from diverse backgrounds in the senior positions, then it's less likely to happen as
And
well.
the money would come from elsewhere. They wouldn't have to. This is it. It's not like you have to just, either it's money or it's people's
Yeah,
well-being. You can actually diversify in other ways that would make
absolutely.
many more people, because you're alienating potentially half your user base,
Yeah, if not more. Yeah,
if not
yeah,
more.
absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it
because
also
there's all the
links
men who then, yeah.
it links into funding as well, like, sort of tech bros getting all the funding. And I think I can't remember the percentage, but it's something like 10% of funding goes to women-led
Yeah,
companies.
it's so small, isn't it?
And I think it's like zero point 0.2 to like black women or women of color,
That's
which is
crazy low.
utterly ridiculous, you know. And yeah, I mean, it's difficult because you can't take all the money away from the people with all the money,
Yeah,
and kind of, or probably radically change their minds really quickly. But I mean, that's the sort of thing that needs to happen. There needs to be more funding for women, more funding for people of color,
yeah,
to help diversity from that perspective as well. And so, you know, if you just always got the same kind of people creating these companies, you're going to end up with the same sort of problems.
yeah. So, given all of your work and activism around making technology more ethical, and more inclusive
Yeah.
and richer, if you could pass one kind of global unilateral law to tech companies to make it a better world,
Yeah.
what might you do if you could wave a magic wand?
I think they all have to check in with me first before they do anything.
Oh, that would be you. You
But I don't
forget
have
your
much
free
to
time
do.
there.
Maybe a more sensible answer. Um, One policy.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that they need to have a diverse board that
Mm.
any like big decisions which affect these kind of things have to go to through. So a bit like the House of Commons and the House of Lords, I guess, you know, like everyone thinks the House of Lords is like a load of posh people, you know, which it is a lot of the time, but they're there to kind of like catch the mistakes that the House of Commons makes and make sure that the things they do are fit, or the laws they want to put into place are fit for purpose.
Mm.
And actually that's a really important role, you know, like another group of people outside of the group of people making the law, because we need, again, diverse perspectives and people thinking about things from very different points of view to kind of catch the errors, you know, that the more homogenous groups might not have thought of.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, where is your primary focus right now? Given that, I'm speaking to someone who has started many, many projects and you have your hands in many pies, where's the greatest area of focus for you right now in your work?
Wow. Yeah, it's in about 100 different. No, it's
Yeah.
not.
Maybe
No,
your
I
top
think.
three. You can have three.
Well, I'm really excited about this Women in Tech Power Network that I've set
Yeah.
up, because that's going so well, and I can see women's lives changing kind of like in front of my eyes. And women coming together to help each other is always a wonderful thing. So that, just helping women to just get out there and live their lives and reach their potential. Trying to find funding for TechUPWomen, our program, because lots of the DEI funding's disappeared now.
Yeah.
And again, we've had 600 women through the program, and some amazing results of just changing hundreds of women's lives through tech. So that's been amazing. And yeah, and kind of with AI, just thinking about the opportunities out there with AI. So like the AI opportunity gap, and a big thread running through everything I do is kind of around technology empowerment.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you could give people a couple of places.
Not another hard question.
Oh, no, it's not. No, this is where I get to kind of give people, like, if you're, for those who are listening and they
Yeah,
want to get involved or they want to learn more or
yeah,
join the Women in Power in tech. I love just like the idea of women empowered in technology is such an exciting idea. If they want to support your work, where are the places that they should go? Because I see you a lot on LinkedIn, which is how I keep in touch with what you're up to.
Well, I mean, LinkedIn is probably the easiest place. So so Professor Sue Black OBE on LinkedIn. But then if you Google Women in Tech Power Network, you can find that. TechUPWomen. If you Google that, you'll find us at Durham University. That's the main places.
And last couple of questions then, because I know you've got a hard stop. One of them is because you've, and we haven't touched on the personal side, but you have an extraordinarily resilient story. How do you find beauty and the will to keep going when things get tough? Where does that come from for you?
Well, I think friends, family, and networks again. Like having people you can talk to when things go wrong is just so important, because things go wrong for everyone. Life's a roller coaster, right? So all of that, and in terms of beauty, I mean, I just see that every day, everywhere I go. To be honest, I mean, like I said earlier, I'm a Pollyanna. So like just the other day, walking down the road, like the magnolias are like in bloom now. And I just stand just stare at. They just look so gorgeous, and like if it's not magnolia, it's the daffodils. And I suppose I love flowers. I've just realised about myself. I didn't even realise that. But like even if it's a blue sky, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
If it's a nice warm sunny day, which we're getting more of now, thank goodness. Hearing the birds singing. So actually, nature is
lots of nature. Yeah.
I honestly had not realised that till right now. So that's interesting.
So tech lover and nature lover. And the last one is, if you could give people a question, so the listeners, to go away with or to contemplate, what question might you want to have people think on?
Wow. I mean, it would be, I guess it's, look, we've all only got one life. What's the thing that you really want to do that you're not doing?
Boom.
Is that good enough?
You're like, there's nowhere else to go from there. So just as well we're at time, because I don't think I can top that. No, just thank you so much. What
you're welcome.
Wonderful conversation. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you very much.